months since you gave Republican influencers part one of the Epstein files. You said the list was on your desk. Then a memo came out and said that there was no list. Phase 2 of the binders never happened.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years.
Shame.
The President of the United States says the Epstein thing is a hoax.
But it's really a Democrat hoax because they're trying to get people to talk about something that's totally irrelevant to the success that we've had as a nation since I've been president.
He blasts his own base for wanting the release of the files. He blamed Barack Obama.
This has been around since the Obama administration.
Republicans voted against the release of the files in the Rules Committee. Then they refused to even return to the Rules Committee until they could be protected from future votes on the release. Speaker Johnson sends Congress home a day early before break. They sent the Deputy Attorney General to meet with Maxwell. She says something favorable about the president.
And are people still talking about this guy, this creep?
Shame.
Miraculously, she gets transferred to a minimum security facility. No one can explain why. Miraculously, the leaks to the Wall Street Journal stop.
This administration released over 3 million pages of documents. Over 3 million.
You guys didn't release the files. You were forced by Congress. Every member of the House except one, and the entire Senate. The reason the president signed it is because it was a veto-proof majority. We can't agree on anything, and yet the entire House but one member and the whole Senate forced the administration to release the files. Kash Patel under oath said to Senator Kennedy, the FBI is not in possession of any credible evidence that Epstein trafficked girls to anyone but himself.
You've seen most of the files. Who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these young women to besides himself?
Himself. There is no credible information. None. If there were, I would bring the case yesterday that he trafficked to other individuals. And the information we have, again, is limited.
So the answer is no one?
For the information that we have.
In the files?
In the case file.
Okay.
That is unbelievable.
We know now that's not true. According to documents, Epstein had a worldwide sex trafficking ring. Girls from Poland, Czechoslovakia, Russia, Paris, modeling agencies sending him girls. He even had a relationship with a summer camp where he groomed girls at a picnic table. Ghislaine Maxwell says 29 Epstein associates cut secret DOJ deals. Turns out there is a list. 6 names readily available if you unredact them. Co-conspirators named, but we got them when you unredact them.
I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein.
Shame.
Maxwell recently tells a House Oversight Committee that she wants clemency to release more names. Kash Patel under oath said Trump's name appears less than 100 times in the files. We now know that's not true.
I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this.
Trump's name appears more times in the Epstein files than God's name appears in the book about God. Okay, by the way, this is the Trump Bible. Move over, King James. Trump's name also appears more times in the Epstein file than Harry Potter's name appears in the 7 books about Harry Potter.
He is the most transparent president in the nation's history.
Howard then says, I'm sure the Epstein stuff is all on video. He was the greatest blackmailer of all time. Well, how would Howard know that? But now the files are public.
And Donald Trump signed that law.
And in 2012, we find out that he and his family are on Epstein Island after Epstein pled guilty to state charges.
It just seems like a desecration.
Shame.
Because I'm curious, and I'd like to see, flip to the Jared Moskowitz section of the binder. I'm interested to see what staff provided on the oppo on me, and because we're in the Olympics, I'm gonna give it a grade. I just wanna see how good it is. So give me your best one.
So first of all, nothing is funny about mocking the Bible and holding up a Trump Bible. That's what you did. You made a joke, and I find it offensive. That's all I have to say.
I want it from the burn book.
Shame.
Shame.
They are talking about Epstein today. This has been around since the Obama administration. This administration released over 3 million pages of documents, over 3 million, and Donald Trump signed that law to release all of those documents. He is the most transparent president in the nation's history. And none of them ask Merrick Garland over the last 4 years one word about Jeffrey Epstein. How ironic is that? You know why? Because Donald Trump, the Dow right now.
Say what?
The Dow is over $50,000. I don't know why you're laughing. You're a great stock trader, as I hear, Raskin. The Dow is over 50,000 right now. The S&P at almost 7,000. And the NASDAQ smashing records. Americans' 401ks and retirement savings are booming. That's what we should be talking about. We should be talking about making Americans safe. We should be talking about, what does a Dow have to do with anything? That's what they just asked. Are you kidding?
Welcome back to Raised by Giants. What does the Dow have to do with anything? Shame on you for asking questions about Epstein. That was a long intro, but a very important intro. We're going to get into it here tonight with our guest. If you're watching live or on YouTube or X, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple, or if you're watching the replay, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. Check the drop-down description of this video. All of my links are there, including my guest links as well. Links to my social medias, which is a great way to stay connected. Instagram and Facebook are blowing up right now, so don't miss that. And also my documentary links are in the description. JFKX, The Clockwork Shining on Amazon Prime and Tubi are also down there in the description. I'm still working on my latest documentary, Psychic Agent, that's covering the government psychic spy programs and the gate programs. It's a very delicate and difficult one to tackle because there's so much to it. So stay patient with me on that. You can also now listen to the show on the Ground Zero Plus radio network with Clyde Lewis, a really great lineup of other hosts, including the guest of tonight's show, Kristan Harris from the Rundown Live. You can listen to my show 11 a.m. PT Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and 4 p.m. PT on Saturday. That's on the Ground Zero Radio Plus network. You can listen to the show Raised by Giants, as well as many other really great shows. I have the link in the description for the Ground Zero Plus radio network that you can listen to Raised by Giants anytime. With that down, we have with us today, here to break down the Epstein files, first-time guest, independent reporter, TV correspondent, talk show personality, the host of the Rundown Live, Kristan Harris. Welcome to the show, my friend. How's it going?
Ryder Lee, man, how are you doing? It's been a long time since we made friends. What was that at? Contact in the Desert, probably almost 2 years ago coming on. And finally now we've had a chance to kind of connect and our paths have crossed. As you know, I'm a journalist and reporter, and I've been doing this basically since 2012 and 2011. And, you know, I've really been involved in so many different pots. You know, I've had my hand in many different pots and many different pies. And one of them is the Jeffrey Epstein situation. As you know, I was a key reporter at the Ghislaine Maxwell trial in 2021 in New York City, Manhattan for 5 weeks. And I think I may be the only reporter that was there every day. There's times I'd go outside and there wasn't a single reporter, which is crazy to me, Ryder, because when I was a key witness in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, my video was used to exonerate him. There was hundreds of news outlets outside, but nobody really seemed to care about the meat and potatoes or the bangers and mash of the whole Epstein trial, which I was the reason we know so much, because I released the stenographer's witness testimonies verbatim and paid to have those released, and no media outlet did at all. In fact, everyone complained they couldn't get a hold of the stenographer, and somehow this guy got lucky and got a hold of her and was able to get these documents put in my hand and publish them on the rundownlive.com. Your forecast in the future. And as well, we are on groundzeroplus.com. Many people have tuned into our show over the years. We've reached millions of people, but I also do radio and also TV broadcasting. But one of my favorite things is researching mysteries and finding out what is really going on in the world. Geopolitical analytics, or, dismantling the New World Order as we see it today. So the Epstein files is just like the tip of the iceberg, but there's a lot of things I know we wanted to get into today, including, UFOs. So I'm really excited to sit here and have a conversation, and also to find out what you think and what you feel about these Epstein files. As you know, we went a little viral over at the Rundown Live with some of these published articles and leaks, not leaks, actually, published Epstein files from the DOJ.
Yeah, I normally take a little bit to really dive into something and do a show on it. I like to wait a little bit until the dust settles, if you will, and then do a show. And I've seen that you've been doing really great work on this, and you've been publishing a lot. You've been instrumental in a lot of things that people don't really even know that you were. So it's important that you get credit for those things. And it's good to see you, man. Thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it. There's so much stuff happening right now, and it seems, I feel like, if a lot of people are feeling pretty vindicated, I don't know if that's the right word, but it seems like that a lot of people should be feeling pretty vindicated, definitely about the code word stuff in the Epstein files and pizza, beef jerky. I mean, it's really strange, and there's not really any other way that you can kind of toss it up other than it being some sort of code worded type of language. But they dropped over, how many files was it? 3.5 million files. And it's a search engine. You have to put in a keyword to find what you're looking for, which does make it a little difficult. I've heard that some people have access to the entire thing where you can just throw it up there and scroll through all of it. But I've also heard that there are over 2 million more files that haven't been released. Or is this true? Have you heard about this as well?
Yeah, so a whole vault was redacted. I call it a vault, but it's probably a data set. It's data set 9 and vault 9. And in data set 9, there's a large amount of video footage, photographs, but also documents. And we are not sure if it's just because they want to protect the women, or is it because there's more data there? And so it's kind of one of those things where when they first published it, they accidentally published it redacted, and there was a lot of underage girls nude, which I think if anyone looked at, it would be a crime, right? But here's the government publishing it on their very own DOJ website. And so the New York Times noticed it and contacted them immediately, and they pulled the whole data set down. But I'm curious to what else is in data set 9 and vault 9. And I know that there's been a lot of documents that were first published and then pulled back down, including a lot of the allegations on Donald Trump when they had the open phone lines to take in any phone calls or maybe what they consider potentially serious, victims to Jeffrey Epstein and people that they may have been trafficked to, which we're hearing that the number is over 1,000 females may have been involved in this trafficking ring. And there's pictures that are, surfacing now of abused minors that are bloodied and bound, and Epstein would use magnifying glasses to burn them while they were tied on the ground. All sorts of interesting things are in these Epstein files. So there's a lot of people that want to use it for confirmation bias, but I think that there's this lack of responsibility for where people were wrong. And as it turns out, I made one of the top traffic Pizzagate videos when that whole debacle came out in 2014, 2015. In fact, I was number 1 on YouTube, and it may have led to them refusing to republish my channel, as where many of my fellow friends like Jason Burmis, Dan Dix, they're all getting their channels back, right? They refused. In fact, I went to one of the top people in YouTube who does this, and they said they can't tell me a reason why. They don't know why. And they told me originally that there'd be no problem. At least they'll give me a reason. No reason why. And it was convenient that it was after the Epstein trial that all my stuff was pulled on, including my Facebook profile deleted. And as we're finding out, Mark Zuckerberg had access to Jeffrey Epstein. Elon Musk was begging to be at these parties, and many of the elite have wined and dined with Epstein, right? So I have an interest in this subject, in this topic. And I think it's really important because a lot of people have used this to say, the QAnon was right. And I want to say right here and right now, I was one of the original people from the minute in the get-go. I said it was a psyop. If anything, it was a Pentagon psyop. And here there are documents in the Epstein files which discussed their meeting with it was with Boris Nikolai, which is a right-hand man to Bill Gates, who introduces Epstein to the gentleman who then, after the meeting, created the politically incorrect forum on the QAnon post, or excuse me, on 4chan, which later birthed the QAnon forum, by the way. So there's a good opportunity that the whole thing was controlled adversaries. So the whole thing could have been run and made up by Epstein in order to normalize these things, so that when there's reports on them, no one would ever give them credibility because it's just Pizzagate. And when I published that video, I talked a lot about the symbolism, the FBI terms like walnut, pasta, and pizza that were all in there, used in nefarious ways, not in ways that normal people talk to each other. And those videos and those documents went incredibly viral. WikiLeaks, right? WikiLeaks is the reason why we had the Pizzagate. But what happened is some individual who was part of a child program, which helped, I think, orphans, which, by the way, their entire website was riddled with the same pedophilia symbolism as what the feds documented as pedophilia symbolism, or CP, we should say, right? And it literally matched up, and it was really interesting to me that kid went in there and shot the computer and hit the hard drive of the pizzeria where allegedly CP was being dealt or traded out of. But so they made it all about a pizzeria, but really Pizzagate had nothing to do with a pizzeria. It was just a convenient segue for them to weaponize the idea and prevent anyone else from really researching it, because you're a tinfoil hatter. You're one of those crazies that might shoot up a pizzeria if you believe such things like there's children in underground caverns somewhere or underneath underground tunnels where they might hold them. If you even consider that, you might be considered crazy. So what they really did is develop a psyop to convince Americans that this is not going on, is from what I am getting from this. But you can look in the Epstein files. I published them on my Facebook, Kristan T. Harris. You can find me there. And I do have a slideshow with a bunch of Epstein files, but that wasn't one of them I was ready to bring on. But I think it's relevant that people realize that the QAnon was a complete BS psyop. Yeah, the Epstein thing was real. Yeah, the William Cooper stuff and Alex Jones stuff was real, but there was no 500,000 sealed indictments. There was no JFK Jr. sitting on Mount Rushmore meeting with individuals. None of that. Like, it was all made up. It was like a big LARP, and a lot of people were part of it. When you were at any Trump rally as a reporter, you saw Susie Q and all the QAnon people. And not that it's a bad idea to want to save children or prevent child trafficking. It's the fact that these people were so easily duped and social engineered into something where they believed that there were, dungeons all over the place with children. And so that was a big reason why a lot of people, I think, called January 6th a form of insurrection, because people were really believing that a lot of this stuff is going on, and it may be going on. What we're reading in these Epstein files and on Little St. James Island and Zorro Ranch and things that may have been going on may have been exactly what Jeffrey Epstein wanted to leak out there. He wanted to leak it out there to normalize it. So if anyone else calls in, it's a crazy tinfoil hat Pizzagate conspiracy, and you shouldn't be trusted. And that's the game. What it's also interesting to me that Donald Trump, he really used the QAnon movement. You don't think he knew that Jeffrey Epstein was really had his hand in moving that type of social engineering and that propaganda? Or do you think he really had an idea that, there's a link there? Jeffrey Epstein colluded with somebody over at 4chan to create the politically incorrect forum that housed QAnon. And so it's all controlled, controlled resistance. They're kind of trying to shape and form people's opinions and basically control people's minds on what they believe. So here we are, fast forward many years later, right? We should know that most of QAnon was all BS, but that there are truths about the Jeffrey Epstein issue, right? There's truths with P. Diddy, the John Todd whistleblower stuff in the 70s, talking about the Illuminati and all this other stuff, and the debauchery he had to do to get into Hollywood. It seems like essentially that's what we're finding out is true. It's all the echoes that we've heard over generations. And now we're starting to really get into a deep dive with these Epstein files. And really, it's all a matter of what the FBI can substantiate, what the emails say, And a lot of people want to point into, victims' claims or anonymous tips, but really those are anonymous tips. Can we take them seriously? Maybe they're worth looking at or knowing, but do we really know that George Bush was at a ritual sacrifice where people were eating, the baby's embryo? What was that? What do they say? Intestines, and eating feces out of the intestines? I'm not sure. But that was one report. Or of Donald Trump being on a boat while a 13-year-old had a baby murdered by her uncle on Lake Michigan. That was another tip that was called in. I don't know if any of that happened. What I can tell you is what I can really dive into with the Epstein files and these documents and see what they really tell us to kind of formulate a certain type of metaverse of our understanding, right? Because it's become very obvious to me that the elite live in a very different metaverse than the average American, Ryder Lee.
Didn't the Pizzagate stuff, though, come from the Hillary Clinton emails?
Yeah, WikiLeaks dropped the Podesta emails. That is where they came from. Okay, so I was also a key reporter that investigated Seth Rich. Are you familiar with the Seth Rich story?
A little bit.
So anyway, Seth Rich, the legend is Seth Rich had the Podesta emails and the Clinton emails, and he sold them to Julian Assange, his brother did, and that's why Seth Rich was murdered. And when I actually went to the restaurant where Seth Rich was last seen, and I talked to the manager, and I asked him if the police even questioned him, and he said no cop questioned him. He said, which is really odd, because normally you would think that they would want to question the manager that was working on the shift or people at the restaurant that were in the building where Seth Rich was last seen. So he left there and then he was murdered, right? That's what we know. And it is now believed that he is the one that funneled the Podesta and Clinton leaks over to WikiLeaks and Julian Assange, who then published them. And that's how we really know what was really going on with those leaks.
Yeah, I think that there's a distinction that needs to be made, because I feel like QAnon just wrapped everything up into I call it a conspiracy burrito. They just kind of engulfed everything in, and anything that was going on at that time was then called a QAnon conspiracy theory. And I think that the Pizzagate stuff kind of got wrapped into the QAnon stuff.
In order to discredit it, which is exactly what Jeffrey Epstein would want, wouldn't he?
That is exactly right. All right, brother. What have you got a presentation here for us for some of the
so we can break down some of this interesting stuff that I thought, some of my key finds that we've been talking about the last couple of weeks, and to some more present issues that are really hot in the news. And this is my little presentation I put together, and I think it's really interesting. And these are kind of some of the bullet points, and we can stop and talk about it. But the first question I have for you, Ryder, and I want to get your opinion on this, is Epstein alive? And the reason why I'm asking that, because I published this Epstein report almost the same day that the documents dropped. And the report was, and I knew what to look for right away. Like, I had this gut instinct. This is what I want to look for. It was a 4chan post posted the morning that Epstein was allegedly, or the morning that he allegedly was found dead in his cell. And the 4chan post, which we're putting on the screen right here, and we will go ahead and blow up this part right here. The 4chan post really dives into basically an individual who was working, right? And he posts this comment, says, not saying anything after this, please do not try to dox me. But last night at 4:15, they took him medical in a wheelchair, front cuffed, but not one triage nurse says they spoke to him. Next thing we know, a trip van shows up. We do not do releases on the weekends unless a judge orders it. Next thing we know, he is put in a single man cell and hangs himself. Here's the thing. The trip van did not sign in, and we did not record the plate number. And the guy in the green dress military outfit that was in the back of the van, according to the tower guy who let him through the gate. You guys, I'm shaking right now, but I think they switched him out. Now, the reason why this is interesting, this was originally a 4chan post. And I'm like, what if this was true? But, it seems kind of like it's trash, right? This is like 2019. So this would have been August 10th, 2019. I saw this and I'm like, whoa, what if this was true? It's probably not. It's 4chan, right? There's a lot of trolls on 4chan. What's interesting is the SDNY did an investigation and they identified this individual. And it turns out that this individual, right, he worked at the jail where Epstein was at. The individual's name is Roberto Grijalva, an MCC officer who worked at the jail Epstein allegedly died at. His name was revealed and banking records released under grand jury filing. It was confirmed he worked there at the time Epstein was at his facility. So this is the guy who made that 4chan post. So I kind of found that very interesting and I published it, right? It goes ultra viral. It gets 1.1 million views in under 24 hours. It just goes ultra viral. This post is shared. It's aggregated. People are making videos. They're pulling the data themselves, which is really what I really want is the people to research and ask what if. So a couple things with this. We know that somebody inside of the jail cell posted this to 4chan. Secondly, we know that this person has been interviewed multiple times by the FBI. There's multiple documents and research with this individual. And again, secondly, he is nervous and he claims that he believes somebody switched out Epstein. Maybe whoever is in the van is who killed Epstein. I don't know. Maybe they did switch out Epstein because all it would take is some facial recognition to get a false positive, which it does all the time, and find some old person of old folks home that just died or just recently died or came through or whatever. Who knows? Also, what's interesting to the subject is they made a fake Epstein body with a bunch of boxes, it says, in FBI reports and the DOJ website and the Epstein files. And they used it to deter reporters to think that they took Epstein someplace else, that they really took his dead body. So their first thing is we have this. This is one of the very first viral feeds. So a lot of people are now questioning whether or not Epstein really died at the prison, or was he moved out of the prison? Is he in Israel or is he in Mexico? Is he sipping on margaritas on some island with Osama bin Laden and Saddam Hussein? You know, at the end of the day, those are some questions people have. And I just want, this is just information. I'm not saying that Epstein is alive. I'm just saying that this is a 4chan post. They included it in the Epstein files. The SDNY thought it important enough that they actually do an investigation. They file and get the person's name. They investigate. They question him. And it turns out the guy works at the prison. All I'm saying, if that doesn't make you go, I don't know what will, Ryder.
Yeah, wasn't there some kind of, somebody was saying that his Fortnite account or something is still active? Have you verified that, or that it came on, that it was playing in Tel Aviv in Israel?
So there's a lot of telephone here. So those claims of active status, from my understanding, have not been refuted. Like, so the company who does Fortnite, is that EA Sports? I can't remember who does Fortnite. The gaming company.
Sure it was even Fortnite at all. If it was some kind of gaming
account.
Yeah, it was a gaming account. You can't quote me if it was Fortnite or not, but it was some kind of live gaming account that is supposedly used and was used by Epstein, was active recently, and they traced it to Tel Aviv.
Yeah, the gaming company, right, that put out that game came out and said that somebody changed their name to that immediately after the Epstein files dropped. I don't know that to be true or not, but that's what they published in the mainstream media, because I know I covered it during the Rundown Live last week, and I don't want to give misinformation, but I know that that's what the gaming company claims. However, users are saying that any name changes are always cataloged. So there's usually a catalog, and you can go back and look at the name changes, and there's people out there that refute that evidence. I don't really know whether or not either is true. Like, I'm not a video gamer. I play Rocket League. Like, that's my knowledge of video games, maybe Civilization. But when it comes to like the video game of aspect, was he playing in Tel Aviv? I don't know. Could somebody just have the same screen name or change the screen name? Sure. I mean, there's millions of players, but
yeah, but if you were doing that, though, Kristan, that would mean that you would have to know what his original gamer tag was.
Well, which is true. How would somebody know that too? So there's these questions that we don't have answers to, I guess. That's part of getting the right answer, Ryder, right? Is asking the right questions. And so when it comes to this, could he be alive? Sure. I just wanted to give you what we know for sure. And as far as the gaming account, like I said, the gaming company came back and said somebody changed their name to that, but there would be a record of that, and there's no record of it. It shows to be constant since I think 2013 or something like that the account has been up. But that is something that I saw, but I kind of haven't really dug super deep into. But I felt that that's on par with this, so I understand why you're bringing that up.
Yeah, it would just make sense because you would already have to know what his gamer tag was, and just because you pass away, that doesn't delete your account. Like your account is still going to be there. So how could they change the name to an already existing account? So that doesn't make any sense. But
yeah, and it was Fortnite. I was correct. So
Fortnite. There we go. Yay, we got it right. Fortnite.
Well, I've read in the last 3 weeks, I probably have read close to probably 3,000 or 4,000 documents. So like my brain is fried with all this information. But this is it says the Jeffrey Epstein Fortnite account is a fake. That's what the mainstream media is running with. Little Saint Jeff 1. So whether or not, apparently Jeffrey Epstein was banned from Xbox Live. That was another thing that was out there. So who knows? Do I think that there's a possibility that Jeffrey Epstein is out there? Like I said, live. I think there's a definitely an opportunity for that. The official narrative is that he hung himself in a cell, which I don't know if I believe that either. Just like I don't believe the 9/11 Commission report, which is also interesting. That's in there, but that's a whole different topic.
Well, you've heard what Maxwell says she thinks that happened to him, right? I actually have the clip here. Hold on. Bring it up.
Safe in jail? Do you feel safe because there was threats on your life? So do you feel safe?
Yes, I feel safe.
There's some kind of music on the background on this, so I got to pause to make sure there's no community guidelines stuff here. So, yep.
I don't have any safety issues.
Because as you told me, jails are sometimes dangerous, and Jeffrey Epstein died in jail.
Pause.
Do you believe that he committed suicide? Because many don't.
No, he didn't. I don't believe he did. I believe that he was murdered.
There you go.
So Gilan believes that he was murdered, or she's covering for him, knowing that he escaped. So this way, there's been a lot of propaganda lately about how Epstein died. Like there's a person in jail. He's like, yeah, I thought I was going to die too. And it's like they wanted me to kill him, and it's like there's all this there's a lot of propaganda ever since the whole Epstein is still alive idea is out there, coming out by mainstream media that he's, dead. So like, it makes me go, I see the trends, right? I see patterns, and patterns normally doesn't mean coincidence or synchronicity. It's intentional. And is Epstein alive? I don't know, but I know his brother also feels that he is dead. As you know, Pudgy was threatened by whoever Epstein's boss was. That was another viral article I did publish. But, I thought this was a very valid question. Also, I wanted to mention that in the recent dump, there was Ghislaine Maxwell's invited to participate in a shadow commission on 9/11, whatever a shadow commission is, because, the real commission must not have come up with the whole idea of the pancake theory. You like pancakes. I like pancakes. Must be the pancake theory. Let's roll with that. People are dumb. Anyways, back to.
Didn't she say that she didn't have enough time or something? I don't have time.
Yeah, she's too busy
9/11.
to deal with, false flag operations by the Bush family. We just don't got time to talk about building number 7 and free fall speeds. And by the way, I've interviewed probably close to 50 first responders. I went to the 20th anniversary of 9/11, and it's amazing to me how many firefighters and policemen would stop at the 9/11 truth booth, and they would look at them and they would say something along the right. It's so sad that people come and heckle at them, and they would stop them and they would say, "Listen, I was in the building on 9/11. I agree with these people." And there's a lot of people out there that talk, controlled demolition. There was positive tests for nanothermite, which is accelerator, right? It was peer reviewed. And the NIST report didn't even check for explosives, right? Because if your house burns down, they check for explosives, but not on 9/11. Anyways, they must have had some kind of shadowy commission, come out and figure out how to control the general consensus and tell what really happened in their viewpoint. You're going to read this big catalog in prison that told you the 9/11 commission report, how it really happens. So you don't question anything. It's government doesn't lie to you ever. Right, Ryder? So. In a recent post, very interesting topic currently that a lot of people are talking about is this idea of sulfuric acid and a purchase alleged by Epstein. So did Jeffrey Epstein purchase 655-gallon drums of sulfuric acid on the same day that the FBI opened an investigation on him? And I'm going to answer that very simply for you here, Ryder. The answer is yes. We have the documentation. I pulled up the documentation myself. I went ahead and I decided to bring it in. They have receipts for them. And at least the payment went through the same day that the FBI opened up an investigation on them, which brings a lot of questions. But first of all, I want to show your viewers on the screen, right, this document. This is from Little St. James. This was documented in the Epstein files, right? And this is basically... We're going to pull this on over. Here we can see a wire transfer request by Little St. James, and that's on 12/6/18 here highlighted on the amount of $4,373, right? He wanted 655-gallon drums of sulfuric acid with fuel and insurance charged for transport, materials for conductivity probes, and replacement pH and cable RO plant. So this is the date of the order, right? 12/06/18. Now we're going to go ahead, and this is the FBI documents stating that on 12/6/2018, the FBI New York initiated a child trafficking case against Southern District of New York, SDNY, and the SDNY contacted the FBI New York regarding several victims that have been abused by Jeffrey Epstein in the mid-2000s. Epstein was indicted in 07 and 02 of 2019 and arrested on 07/06 of 2019. On 08/10 2019, FBI New York was notified that Epstein committed suicide in his jail. But I want to mention that on the day that they initiated the trafficking case, we can now see that he also ordered 655-gallon drums of sulfuric acid. So the conspiracy is true. That is an accurate statement. I saw it going around. I had to do the research myself. I pulled it up. I was able to find it, and here we have it.
But you know what people are saying that was actually used for? It wasn't for getting rid of bodies or getting rid of... Because it can be used for a lot of things, right? You can also get rid of your technology with that.
Hard drives,
whatever. You can throw whatever into sulfuric acid and it'll dissolve it, right? But the thing that the debunkers came out and said right off the bat was that the sulfuric acid was used for reverse osmosis water treatment on the island. That there was this water treatment plant on the island that also uses sulfuric acid. But if this was the only time that there's anything about sulfuric acid, right? This is the only time that sulfuric acid is brought up in these files. So if it was used for water treatment, Kristan,
there'd be more receipts.
There would be more receipts.
So the other thing that's interesting is in a standard single home, sulfuric acid is generally not used at all. Never. And it's like 350 parts per million or something like that. And I don't really know how small that is, but it sounds tiny to me. I'm not who I should ask about this. My friend Brenda Stoudemire, she is at the tip of the spear against the war in fluoride. She would know a lot more about this, and maybe I will ask her after the show what she thinks about this. But she's one of the people that's gone to, California and testified about fluoride and the damages. She's out of Wisconsin here. Of course, another Wisconsin person that can help on this. But from my understanding, my research, it's very unlikely that it was used to purify the water because that's a lot of sulfuric acid. And do you remember, was that Cloverfield? Was that the movie with John Goodman where he's in an underground bunker, an underground base base during like an alien invasion? And, he just always pulls open this drawer and there's a big, like 55-gallon drum. And what is he doing? He's dropping all his waste in there. So, and if you watch the movie, it gets a little dark. And I think they eventually put a person in there. And I'm thinking, well, this could be used to dispose of any kind of technology that he doesn't want people to know that he has. Because if he knows that the feds are now opening up a suit on him, they're going to investigate him, and they're going to go and do some, inquiries. People are going to squeal. They're going to talk about the underground tunnels and what's under there, and the black buckets he ordered from China, which don't show blood on the camera. So, people, all these weird claims that you're hearing. Now, does some of it support what Epstein has in his emails? Sure, but it doesn't mean it's accurate or true. But what we do have here is sulfuric acid, a lot of it. And I don't really think he was using it for reverse osmosis.
I don't think so either.
But it could be used to get rid of hard drives, could be used to get rid of, leftover carcasses. Maybe they're making some of that beef jerky you were talking about earlier, and they needed to dissolve any evidence of, and, who knows? Maybe they're just putting babies in there, I'm joking, but you never know. The way that we're finding out that the world really works, which is the old ancient occults doing bizarre worships and rituals that are being alleged in a lot of these documents. It's right up there with what John Todd was saying and all the conspiracies about the Illuminati. And when you start looking at this, by the way, when I was at the Epstein trial, the 4 star witnesses, 3 of them were prominent stars. So it was interesting to me that the women that were abused, and if you read these documents, they were clearly abused, choked out constantly. Allegedly they were burnt with magnifying glasses, tied up, bound up, raped, it sounded like, drugged, all these things. When you start looking at the darkness behind this and these claims of what they went through, then they were given a prominent position either in film or in the music industry, the modeling industry, or art. It seemed like then they were rewarded for the time that they served with prominent careers, and they were controlled goons, just like, people like John Todd said back in the day, the Illuminati per se. You're going to do some horrible acts of debauchery to get that movie part. You're going to sleep with the producer, all that trash, the Harvey Weinstein, the P. Diddy's. It's all there. We've heard it. The echo chambers of the year. We just didn't want to believe it. And here it is again, sticking its dirty face out as a probability and a possibility. And, I find it very disturbing, but a lot of people have been asking about this. And undoubtedly, Jeffrey Epstein for sure ordered 6 55-gallon drums of sulfuric acid with fuel. And I don't believe he was ordering it just to purify his water. That's a lot of sulfuric acid. And you can make a lot of things disappear, like hard drives, small babies, documents, papers, carcasses, bodies that are buried already on the island because he knows that they're going to look for them. Who knows what could have been put in these vats of sulfuric acid. But we do know that Jeffrey Epstein was tipped off, at least from what I understand, at the Ghislaine Maxwell trial before the feds raided his home in Florida. And that's why he was seen there. And then when they raided him, all of a sudden he was not there. Somebody must have called and tipped him off. Or he was in a safe room or running on some underground tunnels in his mansion. We don't know.
Now, what about Trump when it comes to this stuff? Because there's been a lot of talk, just like the senator in the intro to the video, that Trump is in the files thousands of times. And there's been a lot of talk about that Trump actually was the one that informed the FBI to investigate Epstein on the very first investigation. Is that true according to the documents?
According to the documents, that's legitimate. Donald Trump did chime in. He did call in, but that doesn't mean that he's not guilty either. But he may have had true concern. But there are emails out there of Jeffrey Epstein describing Donald Trump, saying that he's met a lot of very bad people in his life, but none as bad as Donald Trump. That's a direct quote from the Epstein files. Now, why could he just be an adversary, Donald Trump? I don't know. You're talking about a guy who did an interview that said that him and Donald Trump like to do extortion and break up couples who are married and take the husband and get them some, prostitutes to sleep with, and then they would live stream it and show the wife so that maybe Donald Trump, the Donald, could get in there. That's a real conversation he had in an interview on 60 Minutes, like Epstein. It was just crazy. So, I don't know, man. At some point, they parted ways, right? At some point, either something got too dirty or something was too much. And, he was not welcome back at Mar-a-Lago, allegedly. But we do know that Epstein was at Mar-a-Lago a lot. Virginia Jeffrey, came from Mar-a-Lago, right? There are reports of Eminem and Marilyn Manson in the Epstein files. And one of them is that, they were at a country club, it seemed like that they were trying to get extortion info or data on Eminem. I don't know. But so the whole Donald Trump thing is he's listed in the files a lot, right? So he obviously, I believe, understood that there's sex parties going on, may have even partaken in them. There's stories and reports of him setting up sex parties allegedly now, or people that were associated with him setting up sex parties. Other than that, there's no real claims other than what's his name? Give me a second. Is that Sasha Riley or Sasha Reed? Is it Sasha Riley? Yeah, it's Sasha Riley, who's come out and said that he was at a property where Donald Trump raped him, and then he was told to then perform acts on Donald Trump, and he claims that he took a tent stake, a wood one, and put a condom on it and shoved it in Trump's butt and then kicked it into his ass. And then that's why he has bowel issues. And there's emails throughout the Epstein files about Donald Trump ruining furniture because of his bowel issues. And Trump, I think there was even one point that Epstein made a joke that he had to get rid of furniture, burn it, or had a bonfire or whatever. There's all these allegations, right? All these allegations, we don't really know what's going on. All we know is that Donald Trump is in there predominantly. There's no real obvious crimes. There's a lot of anonymous tips that include Donald Trump. And I will be happy to tell your listeners that, yes, some of these do include him having his calendar girl get together. And one of them claimed that he would actually put his finger in these children's private parts to figure out which one had the tightest, private part. And that was one of the anonymous call-ins. So I don't know how credible you can take anonymous call-ins, but there was a lot of anonymous call-ins on Donald Trump. But when it comes to these Epstein files, there's a lot of talk about Trump, but there's nothing that's entirely incriminating that I've seen yet. But there's a lot of files there. And so there's a lot to dig through. We're talking 3.5 million documents. We should be asking AI, what could be incriminating with Donald Trump in these files, and it would probably pull up a lot of the documents if we had AI digging it through. Right now, I'm just trying to figure out, pulling all the ties together, which is interesting. Also, the sulfuric acid, I want to make it known that he bought it from a company with a Zodiac sign name. It was called Gemini Sewage Systems. And as we found out just recently, Jeffrey Epstein was part of a very secret society. And it blows my mind because I'm an expert in secret societies. I used to make documentaries on Skull and Bones. I had experts on the Illuminati. I've had top Masons and Masonic historians reach out to me to talk about what my findings have been, where I found out these things, but I've never heard of the Zodiac Club. But Epstein was part of an elite New York secret society known as the Zodiac Club. And the Zodiac Club, and I have that email here as well, and I'll show it to you guys. The Zodiac Club is in New York and was created in the 1800s. And it seems like it's very similar to the MJ-12 conspiracy we used to hear about from people like William Cooper. But here it is. Just got a note from Bob Prairie, who asked me if I thought Murray Gell-Mann would make a good candidate for the Zodiac. And the Zodiac Club is one of the most secretive societies, as it only has 12 people, and it's always 12 very wealthy, very elite individuals, probably went to a party, found somebody in common, and they're each assigned a Zodiac symbol. What's interesting, the reason why I know that is because if you go to archive.org, right, and you pull up records of the Zodiac as they appear in the minutes book, it has the complete minutes of the Zodiac Club from 1868 all the way to 1928. And here, I'll put that on the screen for you real quick so you can see it. And that's this right here. And if you open it up, the Zodiac, it breaks down what the records of the Zodiac are and the rules of the Zodiac. The Zodiac Dining Club. It says the club shall be known as the Zodiac. It shall be composed of 12 members, which numbers shall not be increased. So you're never to have more than 12 members of this organization. Any vacancy which may occur in the club shall be filled by the unanimous choice of the members. So the members are going to make that decision. The club will meet at dinner on the last Saturday of every month between November and April, both inclusive. The dinner shall be given at the New York Club, at the Union Club, or at such other place as the majority of the members shall decide. Each member shall, unless absent from the country, contribute $5 towards defraying the expense of each of the regular dinners, and the cost in excess of this contribution shall be borne by those present at each dinner. Do you know how much $5 was in 1868? I think that's like, right. That's not just chump change. People are all 12 of them. That's $60 a week. And you're like, oh, what's $60? Well, I think the $60 that might have been a month's worth of money right there, you know? And
I
just
think it would be more than that. It would be more than that.
But it's interesting. So it breaks down the founding members. We got those, and this is all accurate. I verified it with the news that these are the original people. The name's Edward E. Potter, and it's funny. They're like experts in Latin, and they're experts in esotericism, and people who have interest in the occult, and they're each assigned. Look at a zodiac sign. So all 12 of them. And how they pick out who gets the zodiac sign, it seems like they draw it from a hat, according to this. But I just wanted you to know that there's a secret society out there that I had no clue about, that nobody knew about until Jason Burmis was like, the Zodiac Club, what the heck is that? And they even have a listing on a website here. This is quoting astrology. The Zodiac Club. The Zodiac Club is a 157-year-old secret society in New York City, and we never, ever heard of it. We've heard of the Bilderberg Group. We've heard about 3,000 people meeting at Bohemian Grove. We've heard about the Club of Rome. We've heard of the Council of 13. We've heard of the Wolfsburg Society, Aquila and Dagger. We've heard of Wolf's, the Scroll and Key, the Wolf's Head Society, the Royal Order of Jesters, the Shriners, the Knights Templar, the Knights of Malta. I thought I've heard it all. The Illuminati, the OTO, the Jesuits. We can dive into all these different groups. I've never heard of the Zodiac Club, but it makes sense because people are obsessed with the zodiac sign because it's in every religious text, right? Every religious text has a secret, esoteric, hidden meaning of the zodiac sign. Some people believe it is a farming, farming directions, or it's a way of educating the youth about the zodiac or the houses of the Lord or the Mazzaroth, like it is in the Bible. But there's an obsession with the elite amongst astrology and astronomy and with the zodiac signs because it's one of the oldest things that we can tie back to potentially Atlantis. And as you know, Ghislaine Maxwell was obsessed with Atlantis. So,
Well, that brings in the question of the Zodiac Killer, too.
what if it was Jeffrey Epstein? Like, right? You want to know something else that really is interesting? So a lot of people have been mentioning that Jeffrey Epstein might be the initial creator of Bitcoin or investor.
Yes, I've been hearing that.
But would it be proper then that their first purchase with Bitcoin would be with 10,000 Bitcoin for a pizza?
Is that true?
That is true.
Wow.
I'm just telling you. And I can pull that up right now. Hold on. First ever purchase with Bitcoin. Okay, the first real purchase with Bitcoin occurred on May 22nd, 2010, where when programmer Laszlo Hanyecz paid 10,000 Bitcoin for 2 pizzas delivered to his home in Florida, allegedly.
Mhm.
I forgot. Where's Jeffrey Epstein? He was in Florida, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I'm just saying. And now it's all coming out that, you might have been, he was one of the main investors behind Coinbase. He might have been the key factor behind Bitcoin. And there's that video going around of that investor talking about, if people really knew who was behind Bitcoin, you'd get out right away. You'd want nothing to do with it. Well, here we have it. The rumors are that Jeffrey Epstein that was the reason why it dropped so badly recently and has had a plunge, is because there's a links and ties that Bitcoin was originally created and sourced and funded by Jeffrey Epstein.
Hey, he had his hands in everything. He was doing all kinds of stuff all over the place. What is this about him wanting to put his DNA inside of everybody through mRNA jabs?
Well, that's the new conspiracy, right? So the new conspiracy with Jeffrey Epstein is that Jeffrey Epstein essentially wanted his DNA to be in everybody, mostly for the reason of esotericism and knowledge. So it is believed by scientists that your DNA maintains all your genetic memories of your ancestors up to your insemination. So Jeffrey Epstein's consciousness could live forever if his DNA would be in all of us, per se. So the idea is that him and Bill Gates work together. Now, this is the conspiracy. I'm giving you the conspiracy lowdown. Work together to develop a alleged kill switch that if Jeffrey Epstein was arrested or held hostage, he would release COVID on the world, and then everyone would be injected with mRNA in his DNA, and everyone would be a Jeffrey Epstein. And so when Jeffrey Epstein got arrested 2 months later, COVID came on scene. And so that was the original conspiracy. In fact, somebody I've met was a big big promoter of that conspiracy. His name was Trevor Moore. He was an actor in The Whitest Kids You Know. I met Trevor. In fact, he asked me to hang out after the event I was at where I met him, and I gave him a pack of Illuminati cards, and we talked a little bit. He did a sitcom called The Whitest Kids You Know, which is a really offensive but a comedy, but it laid a lot of conspiracy truth on things. And when he worked for comedy, he continued to do releasing factual information or conspiracy fact through his music or entertainment and comedy. So Trevor Moore believed that, and he heard, it was unsubstantiated, that he had all these doctors and biomedical doctors working on a mRNA and a COVID virus that would release itself if he was ever arrested or kidnapped, and the whole world would be punished. That was the conspiracy. I don't know what the truth is, but I will say that is the conspiracy. I haven't really seen it go to that extreme, but we do know that they were doing designer baby experiments. He wanted to clone. Maybe the first human clones could have been made. There could be another Jeffrey Epstein out there. The idea of cloning, though, it seemed was more interested in swapping out organs, right? Like an oil change. If you got a bad kidney, it'd be a perfect match. Or you got a bad liver, it'd be a perfect match. But the fact is, it's illegal, right? We don't have clones. We don't go do clone wars. We do clone dogs. and cats and all sorts of things. They're loved pets. You can go buy and pay to have your cat cloned and get a second cat that looks just like your cat, acts like your cat, and is almost identical to your cat if you'd want to spend $10,000 and you really love that cat. So Jeffrey Epstein, I think, had interest in cloning himself to download his consciousness in a computer and then re-upload it into a new sleeve. Because if you ever, and this kind of segues into the UFO conversation of Yellow Book and human beings being containers, right? Because if we're just containers and you can just download consciousness into the container, well, that's what will make that's what gives us a soul, right? Is our soul is in our container. This container is just a body. And if you can download AI into the body or another person's consciousness in the body, then you could technically live forever. Hence the Emerald tablets and all these people's, including the Clintons and everyone else's obsession with esotericism and ancient history, like the Epic of Gilgamesh and the Emerald tablets and everything else. The Fountain of Youth, which that all stems from the Emerald tablets, the whole legend about becoming young by diving into a pool, which is exactly what Toth talked about, in his writings in the Emerald tablet, if you believe such a thing. But it's very interesting nonetheless. But he was very interested in transhumanism. I had a whistleblower on my show, Rachel Haywire, transhumanist, influencer, fashion model, artist, does a lot of stuff. She's really into transhumanists and futures, like cyberpunk trends. And she went to a lot of these billionaire yacht parties. And she was telling me that at these billionaire yacht parties she was at, they would bring out AI and they would worship it in some kind of bizarre, weird occult ritual. And they would dance around the AI at these execs of Google and other execs' homes. But she also said that there was a family that allegedly had Epstein's cryonics contract to freeze his body, or at least his head, so that in the future they could download his consciousness in the body when science gets there. And there's only one transhumanist organization that I know that comes up in there, and that's Max and Natasha Vita Moore, or Max Moore Cryonics. And I'm not saying he's linked at all. He just so happens to be in the Epstein files.
What do you think happened to Trevor Moore? I really loved The Whitest Kids You Know. That was one of my favorite shows back in the day, and I had it all on DVD.
Yeah, it's cool.
I have it
Those
now,
guys,
but there's been that conspiracy that they took him out because he was revealing too much in his comedy show.
well, I think inherently conspiracies are normal with our culture. But I was blessed enough to have Timmy Williams on the Rundown Live. And if you know who Timmy Williams is, he's Baked Beans and, The Whitest Kids You Know. But Trevor has shared some of my posts in the past. I don't know. So what I make of it, I don't think it was intentional. I think he was drunk and he fell off the balcony. I believe that those reports so far from what I've seen are accurate. There's going to be a lot of conspiracies, especially around somebody as intelligent and smart as Trevor Moore. And he had children he loved. He had a great show. He's brought in Sam Brown and some of the old Whitest Kids You Know members to his Comedy Central show. And it looked like they were doing a cartoon, right? They were working on a new project. I don't think he was suicidal. I do believe it was an accident. And I believe he fell and broke his neck when he fell wrong. Or maybe you're right. Maybe somebody did push him. I don't know the entirety of it. I didn't get a chance to talk to his wife or anyone else in the Whitest Kids You Know. I guess I could reach out to Timmy Williams and see if he would like to talk, about it or anything. But he's always been a little bit weary about talking about conspiracy stuff. Timmy's a fun guy, but that was more Trevor's thing amongst the guys in the Whitest Kids You Know. He was the conspiracy guy, according to Timmy Williams, for the most part. So it was an interesting thing. I don't think he was killed personally, but as a person who spoke with him and hung out with him, got to see him live perform as well. And I have pictures as well with the guys over at Turner Hall when they came around in 2008, I think, or 2009. I don't think he killed himself. I don't think he killed himself. I think it was, unless somebody has evidence otherwise, I would love to see it. So Trevor Moore, I don't think that's a real conspiracy there, but it could be. And if people have any information on that, feel free to send it my way. I'd love to do some research on that, because I love the dude comedy. Like, he made me happy. He made me smile when I didn't think I could smile, right? It's a dark world. And if you like dark humor, Whitest Kids You Know, that's where it's at. It's one of the best sketch sitcoms other than Joy Camp. I love Joy Camp too. Shout out to the guys over at Joy Camp, who I use often in my broadcast, The Rundown Live, and you can find us on Spotify and everything else. So
It was freaking hilarious, bro. I remember the first episode that I seen. I was like, holy shit, this is hilarious. I got to get every single DVD of this show and watch it. And I did that. It's just a sad deal. Now, when you're talking about Epstein wanting to upload his consciousness in the future or being frozen, wasn't that also a conspiracy with Walt Disney back in the day? That he was supposedly frozen for a later date to be then put into a new body.
I mean, Demolition Man, right? You know, you just pull them out when you need them, and you can serve your sentence in jail frozen, and then after 2,000 years of 20 life sentences, you'll come out and society will have changed. I don't know. The Walt Disney conspiracy, that is what it was, right? We also know that he had a fondness for children in an appropriate way, and they have a special club on the Disney World property, the 33 Club for Masons. You know, he's a top Mason as well, honorary 33rd degree Mason. So Club 33 at Disney World, or Disneyland, I think it is one of them too. Disney World is a secretive club that is there. It's the only place you can get alcohol in Florida at the Disney World there. So yeah, no, there was definitely that subject. And then there's something weird in Colorado called what is it, Frozen Dead Guy Days, where they used to have a private family that owned a cryonics chamber, and they put their father in it, and when he died, and then the city made him pull the plug because they said legally they weren't allowed to own such kind of equipment, so they just put him on ice, and then once a year they would bring him out on ice and parade him around town and throw a big party. And that's a real thing. It's called Frozen Dead Guy Days in Denver, Colorado. Anyways, just a fun fact that a lot of people don't know, but that's a real thing.
Frozen Dead Guy Days.
Yeah, Google it. I'm not even joking. Frozen Dead Guy Days. It's a real thing. And essentially, this town in Colorado, like I used to tour as a musician, right? I used to tour in a pop punk band. And I first heard about this from a band called A Farewell Rescue. A Farewell Rescue was this really great heavy emo rock band back in the 2000s. And they were like, dude, we were in Colorado and it was Frozen Dead Guy Days. I couldn't believe. And they were telling me a story, and I Googled it. It's a real thing. And I've talked to people who lived in the area, and they're like, yeah, dude, it's like a big like party. Everyone comes out, they bring this frozen guy out, and they just parade his body around, and then they put him back on ice. And he's been, I think, dead since the early 1900s.
Grandpa Brendo, over 120 years old. For years, he was a resident of Tough Shed in the hills above Nederland, Colorado, just 40 miles of Estes Park, where he remained very, very, very cold. These days, Grandpa is still frozen in a state of suspended animation, awaiting the big thaw that one day someone will bring him back to life. This might be unlocking a core memory for me. I remember something about this, but I can't quite put my finger on it. But yep, it's real. Frozen Dead Guy.
Well, that's interesting. So, you know, other things I mentioned, you know, real quick mention. I did a mini documentary on Adolf Hitler before it was cool for people to talk about conspiracies with Hitler. And in the documentary, I talk about, you know, his lineage and ties to the Rothschild family. And it comes out, and it's really interesting, and it's come out in these documents right here that the Rothschilds and the Epsteins helped Adolf Hitler. And we know this because in this email that I have on the screen right now, we know this because Ariana Rothschild brags to Epstein that, yes, it's well known that the Rothschilds planned with and profited from Adolf Hitler. And that's what we have right here. Let's see if I can zoom in for you guys so you guys can read it. Here it is. It says, I know it's true, but regularly used to say the Rothschilds planned and supported Hitler in mass destruction to gain more power. And this is coming straight from Ariane de Rothschild. And then it's interesting. She goes on to go give some more details. First, it turns out to be 100% true. Hitler was selling his clothes and artwork and living in a shelter funded by Jews. Epstein, Rothschild, and Gutman. No conspiracy. The Epsteins were the Vienna bankers who bought their bank on the ring, hence still Peleus Epstein. And it says, where are you? I'm in bed with your cold. So she must have got a cold from Epstein. Whether it's a way to say that generosity is not rewarded or that the conspiracy theory still exists is quite pathetic. Anyways, so in this mini documentary, I talked about these links and how the Rothschilds funded, both sides of the world, and they really benefited. As we know, Israel couldn't have been created if it wasn't for Adolf Hitler in World War II. And who owns Israel allegedly? ISIS Ra Elohim.
There you
There's
go.
a banking family. I forgot what they're called. The Red Shields, right? Who used to be known as the Bowers, and they used to hang red shields on their door that had a hexagram on them, like the Seal of Solomon. That's what it means to put a hex on someone. It used to be a thrift shop. Yeah, what do you know? And then they also claim that they are ancestors of Nimrod. The Rothschilds do. So, Nimrod, some people believe to be Gilgamesh. I believe him to be a different Sumerian deity, the grandson of Noah. You guys can do your own research. We can all agree to disagree or whatever on that. But I thought this was really interesting that, they talk about the Rothschilds planned and supported Hitler and mass destruction to gain more power. So there it is. There's the admittance of this subject and them just talking about it out in the open.
Well, that's been a long-held theory that, it's not a theory now. It's been proven that, we were funding both sides of the war and we supported Hitler up into a point. I mean, Hitler was actually on the cover of Time magazine.
Oh, he was a Nobel Peace Prize winner, right? He created the Volkswagen. I wonder how many Jewish people out there drive Volkswagens. Just curious. Are they a little more goy than the rest of us then? Or how does that work? It's funny. That's another term that's all throughout the Epstein files is the racial slur goy, which is anyone that isn't Jewish. And they talk about you as you're an idiot, you're goyim, and you're a goy boy and all that fun stuff. It's all in there. But this is another interesting, this is kind of the last one I have for you on the Epstein, and we can dive into it or talk UFOs. But here we have the Epstein videotapes were solicited to the feds. I don't know if you saw this, but there is a message in the Epstein files where a former employee of Zorro Ranch has allegedly 7 videos of footage of Epstein. And it says, and it explains right there what they are: intercourse with a minor, a threesome video, underage video, and 7 minutes, 31 seconds, underage girl, underage rape fantasy. And as you know, torture is all over the Epstein files. They're trading torture videos, finding their favorite girl who likes to get cut and abused and choked out or near murdered. It's interesting. Some of the complaints and anonymous tips claim that people would come and choke people out until they would pass out during intercourse. And then in one case, they accidentally killed a girl. But that was just an anonymous tip in the Epstein files. And allegedly they buried some bodies on Epstein's property. That's all in there as well. But this here shows.
Can you zoom into that really quickly?
This one right where I'm at right now?
Yeah, because Pam Bondi said that there wasn't anything in the files that were anything other than child prawn. That was it.
It says, Edward, this is sensitive, so it will be the first and last email depending on your discretion. You can choose to take it or trash it, but this comes from a person that has been there and seen it all as a former staff at the Zorro. The material below was taken from Jeffrey Epstein's home as my insurance in case of a future litigation against Epstein. So no questions. And he wanted to give it to them all for 1 Bitcoin.
What is she talking about then, bro? I don't understand what their move is and how they can't be held accountable for just directly lying.
So what they're doing is Donald Trump is trying not to get assassinated, I think. Like he's trying to seem like he's doing as much as he can to prevent this from coming out when there's nothing that he can really do to prevent it from coming out. And I'm not saying that he's innocent. I think he's trying to protect or guilty, but I think he's definitely trying to protect people. Marjorie Taylor Greene on video has said multiple times no one has tried harder to keep the Epstein files secret more than Donald Trump. That was her words. And yeah, Marjorie Taylor Greene is interesting. She has some fanatical claims sometimes. Some things I agree with her on completely. But I think that it's interesting as a former Trump supporter. She was like a diehard Trump, she's a religious Trump supporter. It's like finding out that, God is Satan. Like, that's like, she's just completely is kind of pulled away from Trump and, because of this. And I think Dan Bongino, same thing. He got out of the whole Fed probably because of this. I'm telling you, this is right there. Here's the Epstein file right in the bottom, EFTA 000-38382. You can go look at it. This is the email right to the feds, offering and soliciting to sell them videos for one Bitcoin and, Epstein coin, one Epstein coin. And who has the most Epstein coins? The Bitcoins, aka the CIA, right? And obviously Epstein was a CIA asset. How do you think that they did their dealings? How else are you going to do anonymous dealings? You're going to create the cryptocurrency and you're going to sell it. You're going to make money off of it while it goes. You're going to own Coinbase and the exchange. It's all there. It's all in here. You're going to start the QAnon forum to control the resistance. It's and then you're the guy that gets elected is going to be promoting the whole conspiracy the whole time while Melania is wearing Q dresses with Q on it, and Susie Q's at them doing her little dance at all the rallies and everything else. It's a bunch of trash, and there's a million QAnon podcasts. It's funny how they all disappeared all of a sudden, right? And they all believed it religiously. But I want to say they were right about some of the abuse that was going on, but the overall consensus of it is not. Is really just not what they claimed it to be. It was a bunch of trash. And it could have been just exactly that. Epstein having a few beers and just fucking with everyone. What if he was cute?
He might have been the one that's controlling all of this stuff.
Right.
He might have been the face of the freaking Illuminati or whatever control group that you think is in control.
He mentioned the Illuminati. He mentioned the Illuminati in a Steve Bannon interview. I made a viral clip that I just basically included that segment and just had it repeat Illuminati after he said Illuminati. That's because we already knew that the Trilateral Commission and the Council on Foreign Relations were all descendants of the original Bavarian Illuminati. And the Bavarian Illuminati was destroyed, right, in Germany, but they had lodges in Italy, Romania, America, France, Portugal, all over the world. They already had lodges. And the Illuminati didn't go away when they hunted them down. The leadership was passed on to Giuseppe Mazzini in Italy, which is a well-regarded fact normally amongst conspiracy theorists and everything else. And it was later handed on over to Albert Pike, who penned Morals and Dogma using automatic hand, much like Blavatsky and Alice Bailey, to write Morals and Dogma to help Masons go from the first to the 33rd degree. That's why he talks about those good things like Lucifer on page 744 and the Illuminati on page 744 of Morals and Dogma. It's all in there. And so the organization may have been destroyed, but the big hoodwink is it went on. It's in the Library of Congress. George Washington talked about the Illuminati. There are quotes by Thomas Jefferson saying that Adam Weishaupt was a utopian in the vein of William Godfrey. And, Jefferson and Franklin, they liked the Illuminati idea. Of course, Franklin was going off to what is it? Like swinger parties in the UK allegedly and all this other stuff. Who knows? But anyways, the Illuminati is a real organization. It's an organization that is multiverse. There's many different versions of it. But the OTO Satanists are the ones that stand out the greatest because they're the most based off the MK mind control patterns and trauma bonding, which is something that Fritz Springmeier wrote a lot about in his books, the Illuminati Formula, Bloodlines of the Illuminati, and Wise as Serpents, and learning how they trauma bond people and how they abuse these women and these girls to create Manchurian sex slaves in a monarch program. In fact, that's what this is all about, epigenetic memories, right? At the end of the day, your memories cast on through DNA, either through COVID vaccination or, having a child, whatever it might be. So, all interesting stuff here. I find it very interesting, Ryder Lee. What's your thought of all this?
I would agree with a lot of that. Did you hear Roger Avery on Joe Rogan talking about predictive programming and movies and like all of that? Did you hear that episode?
No, I didn't. I did watch a little clip of him talking about Baal worship and how they're eating babies. And you got Roseanne Barr running out there going, they're eating babies. And then you have Snowpiercer, the movie, talking about how baby tastes best. And that's a dark thing in the Snowpiercer. Have you ever seen Snowpiercer? Snowpiercer. Yeah, and right, baby tastes best. What are they? It's all cannibalism. They've been eating themselves, right? At the end of the day, that's what they feed you. They feed you each other. And who knows who else they're giving, who knows how else they're doing synthetic meat and cannibalistic, restaurants and secret places and islands and Squid Games and Battle Royale, and who knows what's true and what's not. But I can tell you what we're finding out is a lot of the conspiracies are slowly getting credibility, and a lot of the things we've learned from these researchers on MK Ultra mind control are coming true. We're seeing it come to fruition, and I can tell you that these girls how hard would it be to go on with life after living a life in a different metaverse where you're grown from birth to be a sex slave? I mean, if that's the case, if that's what the Epstein files are teaching us, that it was a good old boy club, and the young girls were just to get on the good side of the billionaires who are out there taking advantage of underage girls. In fact, that's how Adolf Hitler came about. His great grandmother had sex with a Rothschild when she was 15. There you have it. Just typical. It's generational, the abuse. And they find out that if you abuse the mother, the child is easier to abuse. It's epigenetic. They succumb to the same mind control patterns very easily. And so they tried to breed themselves some kind of perfect sex slave or Manchurian candidate. And that at the end of the day, it's all about power, right? We're all just goyim. The Jews, what was it? They were talking about, Jeffrey Epstein was talking to somebody. I can't remember who it was, but she said she wanted 98% Jew, and she wanted to do DNA tests to hire only Jewish people or work with Jewish people that had at least 98% DNA Jew in them. Imagine if I went around and said something like that. Yeah, I just want, 98% white people, has to be of the German race, and I want you to do a DNA test, blonde hair, blue eyes, let's go. Woo! It sounds almost like Hitler was, trolling the Jews when he was saying that shit now, because it's almost exactly what the Jews believe, right? And at least these powerful, Jews. And I don't even know if they believe in their religion. They believe in Zionism, and it's a political ideology. And then they believe in these weird, bizarre cults, and the Talmud.
Here's a clip from Roger Avery talking about predictive programming.
I think the Luciferians cast a spell on the world. And,
for real?
Oh, absolutely. It's just like how vampires can't go into a house unless they're invited. They tell you, what's going on ahead of time. It's predictive programming. And once you say it out loud and you put it out there and make fun of it and do a little skit like Stephen Colbert did a little skit on his show where, oh, here's a baby. I'm going to take this baby and I'm going to give it to Moloch. And he goes into like a cloudy red, furnace and hands the baby over. And he's, oh, the baby's going to be fine. And they make a joke about it and the audience laughs. Okay, we're all now conditioned to it. We've all seen it. And by laughing at it, we're complicit.
You think that's on purpose, that this is like some sort of a grand design to get us to be desensitized to the idea of demons eating babies?
Yeah, for sure.
Really?
For sure. And by the way, nobody's doing anything about it. We know what's happening.
Why does he act so surprised? Really, Roger Avery? I mean, people have been talking about this style of predictive programming forever. That's what we talk about in The Clockwork Shining, Kubrick's Odyssey 3 on Amazon Prime, is that Stanley Kubrick put the book Catcher in the Rye in The Shining before the two assassinations that happened less than a year after, how that involved the book Catcher in the Rye, where both people that were involved in the assailants and the assassination both had Catcher in the Rye on their person. Okay, it's not just with this stuff; it's just with anything, right? But I think Joe Rogan tries to downplay a lot of things.
Well, I think Joe Rogan at times he thinks it's entertainment. but he probably doesn't entirely believe everything he hears, right? We hear a lot of crazy lunacy. When you go down rabbit holes, hollow earth, flat earth, donut earth, star seeds, trans aliens, reptilians. Like, what do you believe at the end of the day? Do you believe any of that? And then all of a sudden somebody that you bring on the show is like, yeah, I've seen a reptilian. And it's like, what, really? It's just that's kind of like the response he's giving here is like, well, I've heard about this, but really? That's really going on. This is true. This is accurate. There's really a ball and there's a baseball field that's a square in the compass. And we say play ball. And whenever we want to watch sports, we watch football and basketball. And, it's all esoteric at the end of the day. We give ode to ball in our words, and it's the programming. It's just like the pyramid and the all-seeing eye in the back of the dollar bill. Every time you type a capital A, that's a pyramid and all-seeing eye. You're conditioning yourself. You're learning to be conditioned to normalize this whole ancient ritual of human sacrifice. They want to normalize it so they can go to their islands and eat babies, and no one's going to do anything about it because you might be what's for dinner next.
But that has to take, there has to be a person or some group of people.
Yeah, like about 8,500 people. Yeah.
That are manipulating the Colbert Show?
That are manipulating everything. It's all an illusion. Like, reality as we know it is fake. That's the revelation that guy is having. And he's looking around and he's like, it's like Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Well,
that is the conclusion, Kristan. Everything in our reality is fake.
It doesn't work like we think it works. And it's interesting that all these evil people, they really hate Christians. And I just want to point that out there. Now, I know there's a lot of problems with the organized religion, and I agree that there's a lot of messed up stuff, especially the Vatican and the occultism. But there's something to be said about good people. They just don't like good, normal people, it seems like. They call us goyim or goys or whatever they want to call you. But it's a good time to be a goy and not be a pedo-loving, elitist there and getting involved in all these stuff and child sacrifice and rituals. You know what's interesting? And I'm going to tell the story about a guest we had on the Rundown Live. And then you guys can go try to find the episode is actually on the podcast app. So you'll find us on Spotify, the Rundown Live. And it's with Stu Webb. So Stu Webb was allegedly married into the Bush family, sat at the table of the Bushes. And he came on our show and he told us that the Bushes were part of something called the Council of 13. And if you don't know anything, for a lot of people that don't know, that is an elitist offshoot of Freemasonry or Skull and Bones, whatever you want to call it. And it's basically the people behind the infrastructure. And he claimed that the Bushes and, Kissinger and Soros, they would all gather in Denver on the fall equinox, and they would drink baby's blood and then do a sacrifice to Baal, and that was, or Molech, they're essentially the same deity. It's all Nimrod worship at the end of the day, right? Whoever the Rothschild's ancestor, they claim to be Nimrod's ancestors of Noah, whatever. But he claimed those things, and he said it happened at this exact location. And I went and checked it out in Denver. I was in Denver. I'm like, I got to go to where Stu Webb told me that this is all going on. This is like 8 years later after I had him on. So I went and checked it out, and it was pretty creepy. And it was exactly like Stu claimed it. And he said that they go to this giant Masonic hotel, right? The Skull and Bones style Illuminati hotel. And then they go into the bar. And then on the bar, he said to the left, there's a door. You go down the door, and there's an underground tunnel with a hidden door, and it goes across the street. And underneath, there's a ritual, sacrificial ritual that they do, and they do it a sacred deity of either Baal or Moloch, and that's what he claimed. And I thought he was a little loopy until I started seeing this Bush and human sacrifice claim in the Epstein files, and I'm like, that's a hell of a coincidence. Maybe Stu Webb wasn't as crazy as after all. Maybe the world we live in is everything that we were warned about in biblical text and other texts out there that said there's these bad people. Yep, the etymology of cannibal is Babylonian priest. And what is the deity of the Canaanites and of the Babylonians? And where do we get the term bone fire from, or bonfire? Well, it's sacrifices, and you're drinking the baby blood, maybe living forever. Who knows? They're vampires at the end of the day. It's all very scary and disgusting. And is this stuff going on? Yes, someplace there is evil sacrifice going on. Yes, there is satanic Luciferianism. That's different from Satanism. People don't understand that. They get the satanic panic, but satanic Luciferianism is different than somebody who's like atheistic in their New Age movement with Aleister Crowley. Although I would say Aleister Crowley would be more likely a satanic Luciferian based on his beliefs and ritualistic sex magic, and it's all the shit that they taught back in Babylon, allegedly Nimrod having incestuous relationships with Semiramis. And if you look in the Albert Mackey's Encyclopedia of Freemasonry, the founder of the craft of Freemasonry is Nimrod. Not Solomon, Nimrod. So that's a little bit to take in. So I know we were talking a little bit about UFOs earlier, and you mentioned that there was an interesting clip, because this is something also I'm interested in. So my interest in UFOs kind of came in about 2014. I was giving a presentation at the University of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, on giant human skeletons. And if you don't know, there's a lot of indigenous effigy mounds, a lot of giant human skeletons were unearthed in Wisconsin. I would say, I think I found at least dozens of old newspaper articles bragging human skeletons between 9 and 15 feet tall. And so I'm giving this presentation, and in the back of the room, I finished the presentation, and this female came up to me, and her name was Chase Kletchke. And she's like, the first thing she said, nice presentation. And then she followed it up with, have you ever looked into UFOs? And I kind of giggled. I'm like, what are the giants? UFOs? What are you talking about? Well, now I've read the books of Enoch, and I've read a lot of these other books that have a better understanding. And it turned out that this female was a former master trainer at the Department of Defense. Her name was Chase Kletchke. And Chase Kletchke at the time was leading and heading an organization called MUFON, which some people believe is a gatekeeping operation to prevent real UFO information from getting out there. And so some people believe it as a necessary filter of getting the trash of fake UFO videos that people publish, or disproving Chinese lanterns as UFOs. But so I started to take it a little bit more seriously. I'm like, here's this person, has top secret clearance, interested in UFOs. Then I met Mark D'Antonio, top astronomer, also top secret clearance, does designed submarines for the military, has seen a fast mover underwater UFO while on a submarine, at least on radar. He believes that there's something more there. So I started to do some research, and when you mentioned that Barack Obama was talking about aliens and UFOs, I was kind of curious if this was AI or if this is a real video. So I'm kind of curious to what you got here for me here.
It is 100% real. He was on some podcast that nobody's ever heard about. No one knows who it is. He's just on.
It's his little nephew's podcast. He's like, oh, I'll get you a million followers real quick.
Something like that. And here he is talking about the aliens.
Are aliens real?
They're real, but I haven't seen them, and they're not being kept in what is it?
Area 51.
Area 51. There's no underground facility, unless there's this enormous conspiracy, and they hid it from the President of the United States.
There was. That's all that it was. There wasn't a follow-up to that question. I mean, you would think that if the former president of the United States gets on the podcast that no one's ever heard of, that you would ask a really good follow-up question to that question. Whenever he just said, yes, aliens are real.
But I've never seen one.
But these people are idiots, right? They're straight up idiots. So, but then he tried to combat that on Twitter and said, what I meant is that the universe is so big that we wouldn't know. It would be unrealistic to think that there aren't intelligent beings out there. It's pretty much what he was trying to come up with to say.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting to me because I came across a document that has some kind of, I guess, top secret specs to it, and here I'll scroll all the way up to the front top so you guys can see. It's been was categorized under UFO data. It is an indictment of what they call MJ12 by William Cooper, but it was notarized, and the lawyer was alive when I reached out when I got this in 2014. I got this from a gentleman whose father served Secret Service under George Bush Sr., and he showed me pictures, and he sent this to me because he was very thankful that I filed a FOIA underneath the death of William Cooper, which resulted in over 300 documents by the FBI being released on his surveillance and his death. And the reason why anyone knows that is because I filed a FOIA. I'm not saying anyone else might not have, but for some reason the FBI sent me a CD. And in this, it goes into all the things that Naval Intelligence Officer William Cooper, who claimed to have Q clearance, right? All the things that he claimed to have seen. But one of the things he talks about very predominantly in this, and we're going to go ahead and I'll pull this up here real quick for you, is he claimed, first of all, the government had an alien, but that there were multiple races of aliens and at least 4 known alien races. And let's see, I'll pull it up for you guys here real quickly.
The reptilians, the greys, the mantids, and Nordics.
Yeah, he said that there's the grays, and then there's like a lesser gray, and then there's a Nordics, and then the orange, which is orange-haired humanoids, and that those are the 4 that they knew about, and that they were, and he goes into detail about each of these aliens. And it says the claims that man is a hybrid. Okay, the aliens claim that man is a hybrid created by them. They claim that all religion was created by them to hasten the formation of a civilized culture and to control the human race. They claim that Jesus was a product of their efforts. The aliens have furnished proof of these claims and have a device that allows them to show audibly and visually any part of the history that they or we wish to see. They claim that Rh negative blood is the proof of hybridization, and our own science tends to bear out their claim. But anyways, Cooper goes into a whole bunch in this document talking about the different names of the secretive organizations and different programs, from Project Blue Book to Snowbird to Joshua Excalibur. And here it is. This is what I wanted to show you. And this is top secret documents. No one's seen these unless you tuned into my show. These aren't anywhere on the internet to be found. You can't find them. I was thinking about publishing them sometime in the near future when it makes sense. But I think for your viewership, they might have an interest in this. And here it says that according to this indictment of MJ12, or this classified document, there were 4 types of aliens mentioned in the papers: a large-nosed gray with whom we have a treaty, the gray reported to in abductee cases that work for the large-nosed gray, a blonde human-like type described as a Nordic, and a red-haired human-like type called the orange. The homes of the aliens were described as being a star in the constellation of Orion, the Bernard stars, and the Zeta Reticula 1 and 2. I cannot remember, even under hypnosis, which alien belongs to which star. Ebe is the name or designation given to the live alien captured at the 1949 Roswell crash. He died in captivity. Krill, pronounced C-R-I-L-L or K-R-I-L-L spelled, was the hostage left with us at the very first Holloman landing as a pledge that the aliens would carry out their part of the basic agreement reached during the meeting. Krill gave us the foundation of the Yellow Book, which was completed by the guests of the later day. Krill became sick and was nursed by Dr. G. Mendoza, who became the expert on alien biology and medicine. Krill later died. I'm not sure of his death, as this memory may be a carryover from Ebe. His information was disseminated upon the pseudonym of O.H. Krill, and he kind of goes into that guests and religion. He breaks down alien bases. He says alien bases existed in 4 corners area of Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona. 6 bases were described in the 1972 papers of government, all in Indian reservations, all in the 4 corners. The base near Dulce was one of them, which is interesting because a lot of the Navajo have UFO experiences. In fact, the Navajo Rangers are part of the training for becoming a UFO investigator, because they're law enforcement who have had sightings in their community. Just correlations, right? He goes over abductions and other things I found interesting. He goes over the emblems and what they look like. And pretty much here he talks about this. He goes that this is the insignia that is on all the alien crafts, or at least the majority of them, is a triangle. It looks like a pyramid with two circles on the left and the right, and it's on a triangle shaped type machine aircraft. And it said this is one of the insignia that is on the alien craft. It is called a trilateral insignia. I do not know what it means. It is in Grudge and Blue Book report number 13, which I had to look up. That exists. Grudge Blue Book report number 13. And my sources confirm that this is the alien flag, so to speak. The TV series Elf. Elf stands for malevolent alien life form. The malevolent alien life form. And it says a typical malevolent elf as represented thus far can be described as following: between 3 to 5 feet in height, erect standing bipe, long thin legs, small build, thin, head larger than normal to human proportions. It says absence of auditory lobes, absence of body hair, large tear-shaped eyes, opaque black with vertical slit pupils, eyes slanted approximately 35 degrees, small straight mouth and lips. Arms resemble praying mantis, normal attitude. Arms reach to the knees, extended. Long hands, small palms, claw-like fingers, too short, too long, webbed. Tough gray skin, reptile-like in texture. Small feet, 4 small claw-like toes. Some organs are similar to humans, but developed in a different evolutionary process. The most significant finding is that they have a non-functioning digestive system in 2 separate brains. Digestive system in those examined were atrophied, conforms to absence of provisions in recovered craft. Movement is deliberate, slow, and precise. An alien substance requires that they must have human blood or other human biological substances to survive. You ever wonder about cattle mutilation? In extreme circumstances, they can subsist on other animal fluids. Food is converted to energy by chlorophyll through photosynthesis, and waste products are exerted through their skin. Did they evolve from plant life? He asks. Not known at this time. These creatures possess 2 separate brains separated by midcranial lateral bone and partition anterior brain. It goes into a lot of just interesting stuff. And he talks about MJ-12 and everything else. Obviously, Senator Barry Goldwater and the CIA and the UFO. And he says that MJ-12 meets on the airplane off American soil so they don't violate any laws. And there's a whole bunch that goes into this whole MJ-12 indictment. But the UFO phenomenon, I don't think is going away. Are we alone in the universe? I think the answer for that is no. I think it's very likely, or way more likely, that life has been colonized on this planet rather than, us evolving from it, raining on the rocks for millions of years. Because the basis for atheism and science-based religion is that they believe that it rained on the rocks for billions of years. It rained on the rocks for billions of years, and that brought forth our life, right? However, it's way more mathematically sound that somebody came here, seeded this planet, and then created humans in a petri dish, much like what we can now. And that were some of the claims that Cooper had, who had Q clearance. And this is obviously a large document I have. It's 18 pages, and it is notarized by a lawyer as well, declaring that he believes this all to be accurate and true.
I think that the UFO narrative is another psychological operation, and it doesn't have anything to do with aliens. It has everything to do with secret government technology, and the excuse is aliens, because a lot of the things that you just read in that come from a guy named Paul Benowitz. And there's actually a clip that I was looking for that I couldn't find, that was like of a William Cooper like debunking video, and the Creole name that you brought up was a joke between a bunch of different people in the community.
Yeah, here it is right here.
A real entity or a real person. It was a joke.
Yeah, well, these are just his claims. Like, I'm just, this is what William Cooper claimed. A lot of this stuff is actually very accurate. Now, that might be debunked. That is fine. but there is a lot of stuff in here, including like the operations of Excalibur and Joshua, Blue Book, Snowbird. These were all red light sign, blue team, all those things were genuine, real things we can look up, and that they were under FOIA. You can find some information on some of those things. Now, is there a Majestic 12 here? This is where he talks about MAGI is the majority agency for joint intelligence. He claims, who did he claim was involved? He had the names of the individuals that were all here. It is. He goes MJ12, which is different than Majestic 12. Majestic 12 was the false information. MJ12, they believe, was the real thing. MJ12 is the name of the secret control group. President Eisenhower commissioned a secret society known as the Jason Society. Jason scholars under the leadership of the Director of Central Intelligence, Ellen Welsh Dulles, Dr. Zygmunt Brzezinski, president of the Trilateral Commission in 1973, and Dr. Henry Kissinger, leader of the scientific effort to sift through all the facts, evidence, and technology, lies, and deception that find the truth of the alien question. So that's all interesting. It's just data, right? And it's all fascinating stuff. Now, Krill, that could be debunked, right? Or it could be a real thing. I don't know. But like you mentioned, there's people out there that made it a joke, or it is a joke. I guess I'd have to see the evidence of that too. So it'd be interesting to see that video too. And I'm always open to more data, but from what I can tell, just about everything in here, including the fact that he claims that the government had created a device to penetrate deep within the ground to attack alien bases. Well, the government did make a weapon like that. It's called the rods of God, and they drop it from the atmosphere, and these giant rods penetrate miles into the earth or deep into the earth. It's crazy. Like, the government actually did some of the stuff that he talked about. So definitely should be out there and published for scrutiny, though. And I think I'll get to that sometime this year.
Well, if you think what's the easiest way to cover up, if you don't want the public to know that you have this super advanced technology, regardless if it came from aliens or not, or if we created it. I mean, there's evidence going back to the late 1800s that we've had flying anti-gravity craft. They weren't technically anti-gravity, but they were called airships, right? And the way that would progress would be into some form of anti-gravity craft, just like how a car has progressed to what we have a car as now. If you're wanting to cover up the fact that we have this technology, the best thing to blame it on would be something that nobody ever sees. No one can ever, confirm is real. The boogeyman in the sky, just like how everything else is a boogeyman.
Well, Project Bluebeam, right? Werner von Braun on his deathbed, warning about the projection of the UFO invasion on the United States or on the world to give them a justification to establish a new world order. That was the conspiracy for the longest time. There's some things I have to agree with you on, especially with this. My thought process is I had opportunity to ask Mark D'Antonio a question at one of his speeches. And if you look up Mark D'Antonio, he's one of the top, geoforensic analysis. He's a gatekeeper of sorts that debunks all the videos. And I asked him, you keep debunking all these videos. I'm like, Mark, what videos do you consider are real UFO videos? So he's like, well, there's a couple that the government admitted to being real. And I said, Mark, who's to say that's not the government validating that their own technology works against their own army? Because before you use it on China, you're going to verify it works. And you verify it works by tricking your own army. Because if you can trick your own army, well, then you can trick the enemies. So how do we know that? And he goes, that's a great question. And I think there's something to be said about that. But there's also something to be said about where the hell did this technology come from? Was it the Nazis with the Hanabu and Die Glocke, the Vril and the Thule Society? Were they talking to people inside the hollow earth, which they believed, the Nazis believed the earth was hollow? These weird, again, it comes back to occultism and secret societies and talking to spirits. And that's what gets us into the whole ball and cannibalism and everything else, is these people trying to describe or understand things that science and math can't explain. What is it? Is it Satan? Is it God? Or is it, is it like some other religious god or deity or abandoned soul? I don't really know. What is black matter? Is black matter the dark tea time of the soul, and where the soul exists is in this metaverse of dark matter, and that's where all the data goes. I'm not quite sure. People have different viewpoints and different opinions on these things, and I'm kind of interested to see what people think of when they talk about this stuff, because I do think the majority of the stuff that's out there that we see with UFO, I think it's all fake. It's all fake. Even that little like what is that metal ball down in South America? They're like, oh, it's real. I don't know, man. It looks like somebody welded that together in the garage. It's like the paper mache alien, right? Remember the paper mache alien, right?
Yep.
The little elf for Christmas. And listen, I'm the first person that wants to believe in rediscovered life, right? One thing I've learned about with these giant human skeletons in my research, and if you've seen a newspaper article, let's say from the New York Times or some of these credible news agencies talking about huge giant human skeletons of humans, it's likely I was the person that published it, and then it was, ripped and aggregated, because I published over 1,000 of these documents from the Library of Congress. I used to have a frosty beverage and, go troll the Library of Congress looking for weird things, centaur skeletons, minotaur skeletons. There are reports of human skeletons and tribes of humans that had horns growing out of their head. They say that almost 90% of all life on this planet has been killed. We don't know what used to be. Were there elves? I don't know. I know that there was newspaper articles of them claiming that they found a mass graveyard of sprites. And when I looked up what the hell a sprite was, and they said they found the Smithsonian was there, and they said there's over like 1,000 dead bodies of sprites. And I'm like, what the hell is sprites? And I looked it up. It said fairy. And I'm like, how could that be? And I kept looking at it and rereading it. I'm like, this can't be right. But there's just some things that we just can't explain, or we just don't know. Did they take a whole bunch of bones and put them together in the Ukrainian satire that was unearthed? I don't know. They're like, oh, we found a satyr skeleton that was in Russian news in 2013. I wrote about it. And they showed pictures of the skeleton, and it looked exactly like how the ancient Greeks claimed it to be. Not like a standing up human, satyr, but it was like a goat with a really long neck that had a head that looked like it was human. And they had a magic effigy and beautiful burial, like it had a special meaning. But they're like, yeah, they probably just took human bones and mixed it with a goat or whatever. They always try to explain, but there's no real science behind it. It's just, this is what we think it is. So there's a lot of things we just don't know in the world. And I encourage people, troll the Library of Congress, see what they found in the ancient days. In fact, the New York Post just published an article about Lovelock Cave and 10-foot tall human giants that were found there. If I would have said that 10 years ago, Jason Calavino would have been trying to probe me. He would have been like, bro, that's fake. And, he's the objective guy against ancient aliens and everything else. I think we should have a conversation about these things. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying something is weird about history. There were giants, most likely, or a tall race out there. And it seemed like that Abraham Lincoln knew about it. In fact, he was in New York, and he said something about the giants that were once buried in these mounds. You want to know where the New York Giants come from? Well, there you have it.
That was kind of my point in the beginning of the show. It was like a lot of these things that were once said to be conspiracy are now coming to light. I mean, there's so much Native American history that involved giants. The oral history,
a lot of it
goes back centuries that they talk about giants and Bigfoot. Like, hey, I don't know.
Yeah, Bigfoot, who knows?
The Dow is up 50,000, so we don't have to worry about it.
You're not doing it right. The Dow is up $50,000. That's what we should be talking about. $50,000. But instead, you want to talk about some Democratic fake news, the Epstein files, with a failed Thomas Massey, who just happens to be the most popular politician. We don't know how. The Dow is up $50,000. Oh, how's your stock trading, Ryder Lee? I bet you it's going real good. The Dow is up. Never mind that they're eating babies. The Dow is up. Never mind the jerky is good. Never mind that the jerky is good. And never mind
you're talking about aliens, Kristan, and giant
and walnuts and pasta on pizza.
The Dow is up 50,000.
That's all that matters. The Dow is up $50,000. And just by the way, if you believe that, the rundownlive.com is not for you. Do not search the Rundown Live, because that's where you're going to find a lot of this information. By the way, follow us on Spotify. I do have a YouTube channel. They removed my YouTube channel and they refused to give it back. Like I mentioned, probably because of my involvement in questioning Isabel Maxwell. If you know, that's Galan's sister. I drilled her, and she took my photograph, and the next day somebody broke into my Airbnb and stole my laptop on camera. Coincidence? I don't think, Isabel Maxwell would have anything to do with that, but it's just coincidence that she took my photograph, and I got her on film taking my photograph. Pretty obvious. So interesting stuff the world is. Ryder Lee, I have to say, it's always an awesome time to chat with you on these things, man. The Epstein files, I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon, but I think that Donald Trump is trying to, cover his ass, and he doesn't want to be shot. He doesn't want to be like, they already tried to take him out because he's going to try to, expose the Epstein files probably. And now he wants nothing to do with it because he probably doesn't want to die. Somebody probably said he got to cool it on the Pizzagate stuff. Lay off the pizza and the walnuts and the pasta there, bro. Lay off of it. And never mind the jerky.
Stop drinking the grape soda, Kristan. Stop drinking the grape soda.
I get my grape soda from the Grapist, just so you know.
The Grapist. Give me that Grapist. This is my final question. We're going to wrap it up. Thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate
it. Thanks for having me.
Do you think that anything is going to come of this? Yes, it's not going away. Yes, there may be more files coming in the future, but is anything going to come of it? Is anybody going to be arrested? Is there going to be any indictments?
Well, if you're going to do, let's say, a celebrity death, gambling game there, I wonder if Thomas Massey will be on the top of your, list of people that would be on a celebrity death chart for 2026 or 2027. If you're going to do a celebrity death pool on who's going to pass this year. But I don't know, man. I think that there will be something, and there's a couple of ways that I've thought about how Donald Trump can use this. And this is going to be a slightly long-winded answer. I'll try to make it quick. I think that Donald Trump could very well weaponize this to go after a lot of political enemies, but at the same time, and adversaries, but at the same time, they're saying a lot of his friends are in these documents. Are they friends, or are these other, let's say, chessboard pieces that aren't pawns that he wants to get off the board to monopolize a market or improve his position of power? Because once Donald Trump passes on, he's got children, and these elitists don't think as in right now. They think generationally. So will the Trump genealogy go away? Because at the same point, I want to say, I believe Donald Trump is guilty, but I don't know that he did. His name isn't really redacted from what we can tell. It's in the files all over the place, right? So I would like to see Les Wexner arrested. I would love to see Bill Gates arrested. I would love to see Anthony Fauci arrested. I would love to see all these nefarious James Bond villain types arrested for whatever they're doing and put away. But I have a very experienced and hopelessness of our current government affair of holding any kind of accountability of anything that is genuine to correct the problem, other than going after you or me for saying something that is true. So I really don't see anything coming of this, other than this is part of the ritual of them normalizing child sacrifice if it's real, cannibalism if it's real, and that there's an elitist shadow organization that does run the world, and you're just gonna have to fucking deal with it. Myron C. Fagan was right. Council on Foreign Relations, the Illuminati, Skull and Bones, Freemasons, the Underbellies, Jim Mars, all these guys, Anthony Hilder, Jordan Maxwell, they're all right, and there was more before them. You better believe it. And Kristan T. Harris, the William Coopers, the Mark Dices, the Alex Jones, and everyone else that has warned you that there's these type of people rumored in the world. We're now finding out the harsh reality that there might be a different type of elitist society that partakes in a very bizarre rituals and stuff, and that's just their way of normalizing it. I want to leave you with this. I had the opportunity to speak with one of the more prominent Satanists of our time. His name was Eric Freeman. Eric Freeman is in charge of both the Anton LaVey and Aleister Crowley estate. And when I asked him, about these satanic Luciferianism. Like, do they really think that this magic and this ritual and all this bullshit really works? And then he came back and he said, well, who's in charge? Who's in charge?
There you go. Just take a look around at the world.
And there you go. And by the way, that is just letting you know, don't eat babies. It's okay to be a goy. Right now, it's pretty cool to be a goy. You're not eating baby. Right. No jerky.
No jerky.
And by the way, I'm not saying I know they really are eating babies, but, they're probably eating babies. So.
Well, Kristan, thanks so much for coming on, brother. Really appreciate it. It was an amazing conversation. Please be sure to hit the thumbs up button to help the channel in the algorithm. Share, subscribe, hit the bell icon as well for notifications. Thanks, everyone in the comment section. And we'll see you guys next time. Kristan's information is in the drop down of this description. Go over there, subscribe to him on Rumble and Spotify.
Support Ryder, guys. Support Ryder Lee, man. Donate to him. Help him out.
Thank you very much, brother. See you next time, brother. Bye-bye.